Greetings, friends. Thank you for joining us for this important reflection that we're engaging together. Really grateful that we can do this together this time at this moment. So let's just take a breath or two as people arrive, a deepening breath as we receive how we are and connect with our body, with the ground, with what we feel, what's present. So today we have this discussion, this reflection that we're all engaging. But before we go there, we'll just do a little bit of practice together. So I'd like to open the session with the refuge chant. Buddhang, Dhammang, Sanghang, one day. I honor, I pay respect, I align with the refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The Buddha, historically, the awakening potential within our own process, within all beings, the fundamental nature of awareness, Buddhic knowing. Here I take refuge, the Dharma, the ancient stream of teachings of awakening, the Dharma nature, the timeless, deathless Dharma nature that we realize and open to, and the Dharma of all things that teach and awaken us that we contemplate. And the Sangha, the lineage, the great mighty lineage of practitioners, honoring the roots of the practice in Asia, all the great teachers, transmission that we're part of, Sangha as community, and Sangha essentially as our commitment to practice and orient towards awakening. So just open with this Buddhang, Dhammang, Sanghang mantra. You're welcome to join in or listen to as we consciously call on and align with refuge. Buddha, 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 one day, Dhamma, Dhammang, Dhammang, one day, Sangha, 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 one day, Buddha, Dhammang, Sangha, one day, Buddha, 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 one day, Dhamma, Dhammang, Dhammang, one day, Sangha, 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 one day, Buddha, Dhammang, Sangha, one day. Hand over to Yong to lead us in a little bit of grounding, arriving meditation.
Thank you, Thanissara. So we'll just spend a little bit of time arriving together, welcoming each other, as we land into this shared virtual space. While landing ever more deeply right where we are, not having to rush, just taking one's time to settle, to attune to how it is now. Let oneself know it's okay to listen in. Perhaps little by little, allow the body to soften if it's available into the ground, the earth beneath. Appreciating these moments of simplicity, of being held by ground, even as what we're arriving with could be a bit churning, activating, busy, honoring that and appreciating this moment, just to pause as we settle in, arrive. Remember this ground that we can keep touching into. Last minute or so, still not having to rush, appreciating even moments of not having to do or fix, manage, figure out. A moment to feel the body as it continues to settle and arrive, to breathe, to listen. To remember refuge. Thank you, everyone. Before I hand it over back to Thanissara, just also offering my warm welcome, appreciation for your presence and participation this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yong. So this is a council, which means that we're not here as facilitators, as hosts of this conversation, to be directive in the process, but to be receptive. But we are seeding and nudging along a focus for us all to gather around. I think we're very aware from this recent months of what we've been observing of climate catastrophes, climate driven, and deeper what drives this imbalance, right back to what the Buddha called the burning of the mind in the fire sermon, the third sermon he taught, the mind burning with the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, and that mind untethered to wisdom, compassion, deep reflection, the practice of mindful awareness, projects and is driving this engine of destruction that we're now seeing in very up close, very personally impacting us all. And it's a very difficult moment, but an important moment for us as Dharma practitioners to be here for ourselves, for community, for us be willing, as the Buddha taught, to, in the First Noble Truth, to realistically contemplate dukkha, the experience of suffering, what is difficult to bear, what is hard to be with, but to do this on the collective and planetary level. We have to see things how they are, accurately, clearly, as much as we can, free from the filters of the projective mind, to be able to tune into and connect with the appropriate and compassionate response, as the Buddha did in his turning of the wheel of the Dharma. But we now need to do this collectively, because the nature of what we're looking at is so vast and so overwhelming and so complex, and frankly, so terrifying in its implications and its unfolding, and is speeding up, that we need to come together and share together our our conscious awake reflections and how it's impacting us. So we're going to be looking at how it's impacting us personally, what we're with, what we feel, what we've been called to do. We're all being called and have been called and all doing things already, but also maybe what is the edge of that call for us to engage. And also we want to hear as a Dharma community and as an organization that's founding and supporting the turning of the wheel of the Dharma, what you would like to see us do as Dharma communities. And this is a conversation we want to take out further into the centers. So we're seeding this as a prototype, if you like, and to deepen it in Sacred Mountain Sangha. So I just want to, so we're not going to be going into a lot of big talks as the, Yong and myself and Juna and Sumedha's here for a while, and Sister Santajita will be joining us. But we're going to be seeding the questions for you then to go into breakout rooms, for you to discuss together, to reflect together, and we'll give a form for you to do that. And then we're going to, at the end of the session, harvest. But you can also harvest and put what you're with and the process from each sharing in chat as we go along. And all of this is important for us to gather in, for you to see and for us to know about. So I just, before going there and handing over to seed into our first question, like what is present for us emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually as our crisis climate deepens. This is our first question that we'll be looking at in our breakout rooms. But I'm just going to put that in chat so you have that question. But to seed that question and to really focus us in on meeting this moment, I want to amplify a couple of messages from those that I follow. NASA Climate Science, Peter Kalmus, who's also a practitioner. Many of you may have seen him on social media. He was on Democracy Now! Yesterday or the day before, really laying out where we are. And he's been very brave. He's moved out of the sort of behind the veil of science and actually been on the streets, got himself arrested for his troubles to try and sound the alert. So just to quote a little bit from his own sharing. So he's saying currently the US government is hard pushing to expand fossil fuels, which is taking us towards mass death at 2.8 to 3.2 degrees by 2050 to 2100. So this is, sorry, I'm just riffing on this, but well, let me just finish his quote. I haven't really got time for that. But the public isn't aware of how hellish the situation is as mass media blocks systems change by downplaying the dire predicament created by global industrial capitalism. And basically, this is what we're in. So, and then he says more personally, I hate to be the Cassandra. I hate having to tell hard truths that I think are terrifying. I think what's happening on the planet right now is genuinely terrifying. And if you're not terrified by it, you probably don't understand it. Society is so in denial about this. There's so many signals from politicians, corporations, media that say we can continue as usual. That there are few voices like mine that say, no, this is an effing emergency and we have to have all hands on deck. We have to deal with this. We have to switch into emergency mode. If we don't, literally billions of lives could be at risk. I feel so bad for saying this, for having to sound the alarm. It takes a big psychic toll on me for doing so, but I do it out of love, and out of love for my kids and out of love for everyone. So that's Peter's amplifying his message, who's actually really seeing clearly from the science and seeing what we're all seeing now. And from Chris Packham is an English naturalist, nature photographer, television presenter, author. And he's been speaking out more, a couple of things that we have to actually re-language, use language that's more truthful. It's not climate change, it's climate breakdown. And we, for example, as he says, and also, for example, we'll use this euphemistic term, the loss of species, rather than naming this is human-driven extermination of mass species. It's not just human life, plant life, forests, sentient beings in all forms of the ocean, of the lands, creatures, insects. So we're taking it all down with us. So let's just take a breath. So I'd like to hand back to Yong just to and then Juna and Sumela just to add a few lines about how you are, what's impactful for you as we tune into for me. I feel right now, I can feel this sort of real trembling and tightness in my body. But, like I can feel a shock effect actually going through my system, even though I'm not surprised to hear all of this. Yeah, I feel a bit vulnerable. So Yong, what's present for you?
Thank you, Thanissara. It's interesting that sort of what was present for me was in the short meditation that we led were the sounds of the cicadas right outside my window, and I was spending a good bit of time this morning just in the yard. So I'm here zooming in from just outside Chattanooga, Tennessee, on Signal Mountain, the traditional lands of the Cherokee and Muskogee. And as I was listening in, there's a sense of so much life, the birds, quite a bit of birds, the night insects still loud into the morning, and still I can hear the cicadas. And it felt just as if, in a sense, another ordinary Saturday morning for me, another day of just things going on, nature doing its thing, me thinking about what's next on my schedule. And so hearing into what you just shared and sort of remembering again the news that's been digested throughout these months. Again, the sense of that deeper anxiety just rising, moving forward as it has been, seems to be doing more and more these days. This background's unease, this kind of like the urgency that can at times be lost in our everyday, just continuing to push forward, to press forward into awareness. So just listening into what you shared, Thanissara, noticing how that there is this kind of tension between the remembering of what's happening to our world and what we're facing, and just the sense of what I was with moments ago, the beauty, the seeming ordinariness of this day, how things are moving so slowly, apparently, just in this immediate experience. So kind of noticing that both within me. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Yong. I love that. Thank you. Gina.
Thank you, Yong and Thanissara, and all of you for being here. I resonate with what Yong just said. I also live in a beautiful place, and there's a lot of life. I see whales on a regular basis, and a lot of different diversity of animals. And so it is easy to feel secure in that, to feel as though things are normal, or they are as they were when I was a kid in the natural world. And then yet last night our house smelled like a campfire. There's just fires all around, and that kind of shock to my system of smelling smoke that I know is from massive fires. And even as I say that, I can feel that sense of anxiety and grief. There's a lot of grief that is present for me. And then there's also almost a feeling of like an inner scream, where I was saying to my husband yesterday that I don't have many of my close friends that I can actually have this conversation with, even though they're, very aware and caring, and people that care deeply about the natural world, but that it is so overwhelming that there is a shutdown, or there's an automatic going to, well, I recycle and I don't eat much meat and I try not to, have an electric car, or whatever it is, these boxes that are being checked, in terms of personal responsibility, like, well, I've done what I can. And I feel like for me, the inner urgency is around that that's not the point, that again is the business as usual, that I could just shift things around in life, or we can, but that what I'm really wanting to hear, and I'm so grateful to be with you all, is a sense of how are we going to live into the world that is here and that is coming. How are we going to do that personally, and then how are we going to do that collectively, far beyond the way that we arrange our material world, but in terms of how we prepare ourselves, our capacity to meet the crisis, for ourselves, but also to hold space for a collective that I think is now and will increasingly be, in a state of confusion and crisis, breakdown of some kind. So thank you all. It's a sigh of relief to be here with you and to be able to have this conversation. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you for mentioning the scream. I often feel that, like wafting down a supermarket aisle, and this sort of blanket, soft, this sort of, it feels like the spell needs to break, and the scream is getting louder. Yeah. Sumeda.
Yeah, thank you so much to Juna and Yong and Thanissara and all of you also for being here together. So yeah, for me, I really resonate also with the different levels going on. So I also am blessed to live in a very beautiful place in the forest. And but actually I just did like a 10-day walking retreat with families, so like young people and kids, and the area where we were walking in France, it's like, we were trying to walk by rivers, and the rivers are no longer there, basically. So it's so we went to this particular area to have forested walks, and usually there are rivers flowing, and by the time we got there in August, the rivers which at this season should be there had dried up. And even we went to it was still very beautiful, but like this place where the water comes down through the mountains and up through the earth, and that normally kind of creates an outflow, and there's a tiny little pool, and like we were all there kind of really appreciating this cool water. And also, like, a lot of us, I was really grateful for the group, a lot of us aware that yeah, this is really serious, and being there with children, that this is really serious. And also that the place was still I was really struck by the fact that the place was still beautiful. So the forest was still there, but in 1, 2, 3 years it's all gonna dry up. And so this sense of, for me, there's like a sense of like a lot of grief, and a lot of sense of how to say it, it's like the incredible frustration that we have more than this within us, and that this is a human driven situation which is so impacting the other species on this planet, so animals, plants, forests. So there's part of me is like I think resonates with that shock effect, or like bewilderment, like how can we still be doing this, and the kind of cognitive dissonance going on of like what can happen when we actually connect in our being with our embodiedness, with our capacity for empathy, and how the majority of us are still continuing to live in very disconnected levels. So for me, both of those things are there. And I think for me, what feels most important is, at the moment, is this, like, how do we connect together in a way that helps us to nourish our deeper belonging actually with this earth and strengthen ourselves through our connectedness and our connectedness with the nature that actually we're so destroying. So so for me, I'm a lot with that. How can we like raise the alarm and act, and also stay connected with this place of where we're really honoring our community in this in the human sense and in the bigger sense as a resource. So yeah, that for me is very important, and it also brings a lot of grief, because there's a lot of awareness of how fast the destruction is going, and how many animals, how many plants, how many species all of the time are suffering. And, you know, we go to the supermarket and buy something wrapped in plastic, and like the immediate effect of all of that, I find very hard to be with. So
thank you so much, Sumeda. Yeah, really the deep grief and frustration and complex layered emotions feeling and felt in the body. And that Yong was saying, like this normality, you know, the birds, everything we're seeing, and then this creeping thing that's arising, pulling up into our conscious awareness that not all is not well, for sure. So we're going to go into breakout rooms with the question here in the chat. What is present for you? And I'll just, in case people came in a bit late, just put that again. What is present for you as we, as our awareness, and how that impacts on all levels of our beings, as our awareness increases about the deepening of our climate crisis, you know. Okay, so welcome back to one and all. So we're just going to take about a 7-minute stretch break. Maybe try and keep it even 5 minutes if you can, so we can keep the momentum. I would really like to encourage, if you feel able to just put in the chat for now, and for those that can stay the whole session, we'll have a more live open space to speak live. But just to put in the chat anything that you can distill from your conversation that you want to share, from the discussion, from the input. Thank you, Carol. Despair, thank you. Yeah, it can be a few words, it can be a sentence or two, whatever you want to write. And so let's take a short turnaround break, 5 minutes, a few more minutes if necessary, before we go into the second part. And also welcome those that have just joined us. Welcome Sister Santagita, who will be inputting shortly into our discussion. Try and keep maybe quiet, staying with what you're with, because there's a lot I've noticed in myself, a lot's being evoked on a felt sense level, in the heart, in the body. And I think this is really, if that's happening for you, this is really important, that this is where we feel the impact. The mind can do all sorts of stuff around the moment, but the body knows. The body's an earth body. So let's stay with that, and we'll, do the chat, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes or so shortly for going into the next piece. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your very, very powerful, poignant, moving, real reflections that you've shared. I really also hear being echoed the importance of us being able to hear and be together in this moment, and have, I think Juna mentioning, it's so hard even with people and friends that are very aware in the circles we move. It's hard to break that spell and what feels like a taboo subject, never mind further afield, but it is something we need to do. And so this is a space we can do that and get more real as awakening about being with the real in a world that is so deflective of the real, and so distorting for very distorted agendas. Okay, so Sumeda, could you help us land back together? Thank you.
Thanks, Thanissara. So yeah, just taking like really recognizing that in this moment, as we are coming together and coming into our being to listen, how precious it is to be able to stay grounded and connected to this this earth that we're part of. So maybe we're feeling more activated as we touch into the realities of what we sense. So just taking the time to really feel into our body and feel into, if we can, the connection with the earth that is here supporting us, maybe even appreciating our listening. And knowing that the pain and the wish to respond that we're feeling is from this sense of connection. And we can ground back into it. Noticing the air that we're breathing, that we're nourished by, appreciating that nourishment and giving back with each breath our care, and letting this movement also ground and hold us to stay present, stay sensitive to our connectedness. And stay grounded in our connectedness. And whatever the feelings that are coming, are being evoked, letting them have their place in our listening. How precious it is to give space to the suffering we feel in connection with this earth we're part of, and the possibility of our response that can come within this space of listening. So not closing down, and also not losing ground. Noticing that the space of our listening can be warm and open and honoring of what we need to feel. Listening to how we may wish to respond deeply from our deep connectedness and belonging. This earth, with this air, with the space, the water, the myriad beings, this life we're part of. Honoring this moment of our listening and our even our wish to align and respond. Even if we feel uncertain, stuck, honoring our listening here. And giving space for our experience and a response to arise. Knowing that over millennia, as much as human beings have been involved in destructive activity, they've also been involved in this listening, deep connecting, deep listening, deep awareness. We can tune back into this. Through our own being, allow a response to come through. I'll pass back over to Thanissara, and also just to say that I need to leave now, but it's a real blessing to have been with you all.
Thank you so much, Sumedha. Thank you so much. I'm glad I got nudged about the meditation. It's so vital that we keep coming back to that. Yeah, well, sorry, I'm just sort of landing. So yeah, this next question, the next area of our focus, I think rather than going into what we are doing, although it would be nice to share some of that, but what is our edge? What do we feel to break into even more in terms of the movement of response? And sometimes we equate that with doing, but it also connects with an inner shift of consciousness, an inner recalibration of our understanding of how we're living in a business as usual world, and what would it mean and what does it feel to reorientate that. And then the last question we'll go into is really like, what would it mean for our Dharma centers and organizations and other organizations to really live with this reality? What's the reshaping? But starting with ourselves, what is the edge? Breaking the spell, speaking the truth, so that's that kind of territory. So I just invite Sister Santajita, you have a few words to share on this, approaching this inquiry, on this focus. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for inviting me, Thanissara, and I'm happy to be here. And I speak to you from the Aloka Earth Room, which is a small sanctuary in San Rafael. And, responding to Thanissara's prompt, I think what is for me like the edge where I feel I'm really stretching is two things. Well, actually three things. I have weekly meetings here at this small place, and it is very small, and there's a small amount of people coming, but to continue to do it regularly, that's one edge, I'm working with, to continue to be there, to show up, and to receive people here at this small place, the Earth Room. And then at the same time, teaching at the bigger centers like Spirit Rock, IMS, BCBS, and bringing the climate situation, with me, with every retreat I teach, with every day long I teach, with every evening I teach. Is it a Mother's Day teaching? I speak about Mother Earth. Is it something else? I always bring it in because there is so much scope inside of the Buddha's teaching to relate what's happening now to our practice. It's not outside of the practice. It's not like an extra little thing, but it is Dharma, because Dharma means nature. And to have that courage, to speak up in this way, even, not everybody might be on the same page. And, I use also the fact that I'm an ordained nun since over 30 years, and that gives me like a certain clout, which I want to use for that. That's the other edge. And then the third edge is going onto the street, with a group of people who meet here at the local earth room, trying to bi-weekly go onto the street, under the farmer's market, and just sit there with some beautiful signs and invite people to pause with us and face what is happening. That's the three, main things what I'm doing. And then also in my own practice, to continuously keep that inquiry alive, Sumedha was speaking about, to really try to resonate with this biointelligence we are embedded in, since time immemorial. But it got kind of not noticed. But now it seems to be, that more and more people, more and more Homo sapiens start to become aware of it. And that's what I want to support and want to use the Buddhist teaching for that, because it has everything we need to help us, to train our minds and increase our capacities to relate. So thank you so much, Thanissara, and handing back to you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you so much. And blessings for the Aloka room, earth room. I love we've been getting on the streets and everything else that you're talking to. Thank you so much. And Juna, if I can invite you to speak to the question from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sister Santachita. There's a teaching that I've heard from the poet David White, and I know many others hold this perspective of what would your future self look back and thank you for having done. And our practice is in the present moment, and yet we're looking towards a future. We're looking towards predicting what our future might look like. And there's this strong prediction that there will be a lot of chaos. And so in my own practice, trying to hold that. So what are the capacities that I need to be developing now, knowing that I'm going to be living into this future that might be quite challenging? And how do I develop those capacities, not just for myself, for my own well-being, but a capacity to support others and to show up in a way that is generous, that is compassionate, because we know when human beings are in a state of crisis and great pressure, that we tend towards divisiveness. And so how to really strengthen that in my own practice. And then my work is I work with embodiment in a number of different ways. And so looking at trying to read from other sources, but also understand for myself, what is the role of embodiment? Because as Sister Santachita said, we have become so divorced from our innate belonging. And that's inherently through the body. The body inherently knows that belonging. So how do we reconnect to that? And for me, that is an edge, because not everyone wants to hear this. Not everyone wants to, practice with these ways of building capacity in regard to the climate crisis. So that feels like an edge and an important ongoing contemplation for me, is the role of embodiment.
So true, so essential. Thank you so much, Gina. And Yong, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Sort of what's been an edge for me in the question of what to do or how to respond is there tends to be a lot of noise that arises in the mind, a lot of should do this and should do that, or I could do this and could do that. And what I've noticed over the past little while are three inquiries that have been sort of emerged out of that noise. That's been really helpful in terms of how to focus my energies. And the first question is simply like, what is mine to do? And it's been really helpful to ask, and as a way of honoring who I am, my nervous system, the capacities I have, the gifts I have, the ways in which the opportunities and channels I have to share. So what is mine to do, and to be to ask that again and again. And the second question that's been really helpful is who can I do that with? So who can be a partner? Who do I find resonance with? So that I don't have to do it alone, so that I can be in a community, that I can sort of find support and power and energy through connection, rather than the sense of me alone, isolated, feeling a bit more helpless. Like what is what can I actually do? So those two questions. And this third question that's been really helpful for me is to keep asking, so what is, is it enough? And so for me, this question, what is mine to do? Who can I do it with? And then is it enough? So to keep checking in with these, to stay alive with, to be in this very intimate relationship with, to keep listening to these three questions, so that they become these touch points, these ways of checking in, and in response to the growing urgency, in response to the sense of, well, I feel really called. I feel very called to show up. And so, what is mine to do, who to do it with, and is it enough? So those are a few things that have been helpful for me as I think about this question. Thank you.
Well, Yong, that's super helpful. Thank you for distilling, as you said, out of the noise of it all and the multiple ways we get activated. Some really helpful focal points. That's so brilliant. Great. Thank you so much. Oh, let's just take a breath and touch into what's present in the body, feeling tone. As we feel into how we may, what's emergent, what we like to bring to the response. And again, remembering when we go into the breakout room, it's as much as listening as well as sharing. So we'll go in again for another 20 minutes. I think mostly you're going to be in a different set of people. You have a chance to meet and hear others. And so again, just establish the boundaries of time, about 3 minutes each. Keeping that so you make sure everyone is heard. Everyone can share if they wish to, of course. And just listening in when you're not sharing. And just, don't try to plan too much. Just speak with what's present. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're all in a mess together. And trying to navigate this difficult territory. And you have a few minutes then to just free share. And then again, when you come back, we'll again take a little bit of a break, 5-minute or so break, and then please again distill and put into the chat so we can have a harvest the group mind, group harvest, hive mind. Okay. So just put you in the groups now and see you on the other side. Okay, I'm going to invite Juna, if you would like to help us ground and come back into what's present for us before we continue for our last section of our inquiry together. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, everyone. And an invitation, we have about 10 minutes for practice together. So there's an invitation to find a comfortable posture for your body, whether that's sitting or walking, lying down, standing. If it's helpful, taking some longer, deeper breaths. And it's not easy to engage in this work. And so you might just notice what's arising in your body or your mood or emotions that might be arising. And collectively, we can remember the core Buddhist teaching on refuge. There's a possibility of taking refuge in a deeper knowing, a listening, awareness of the heart. So we'll sit together in silence and take this time for inner listening. And if the mind is busy or if there's a lot that's arising, you can ask a question, how is it now? Or what's happening now? With great kindness. great gentleness, our bodies that resonate with all that's happening, all that's being brought up. And these are difficult territories. So together we can be gentle, kind, compassionate as we listen in, receiving our experience in awareness. And in the last few moments of the meditation, if it's possible or available, you might remember joy, a simple joy of connection, the light, the sounds. Joy is so sustaining, so nourishing.
Thank you so much, Juna. Thank you. So, so the last part of our focus is that, yeah, I really, really love to have in your wildest dream, what would you like to see happening in our Dharma centers, organizations, and maybe if you're not in that sphere completely, in leadership, those in leadership roles, those that are pitching the tone, the consciousness, what do we need to do to meet this moment? How do we need to reconfigure? What do you suggest? What do you want to see? Yeah, we're in these models of business as usual, flying lots of people into retreats, like avoiding the subject sometimes, or just going around the edges of it. Yeah, so how can we prepare ourselves, what do we need to teach? What kinds of things do we need to be hosting? What trainings do we all need to be doing? There's a lot of trainings and focus on increasing and understanding and opening around diversity. What can we learn from that to apply to this moment for restructuring, recalibrating? So I'm going to hand over to Yong just now to to also help pitch to this question. Our last question that we'll be focusing on is how best can Sacred Mountain Sangha, we would like to be in service of this moment. Obviously, it's very much at the core of what we do, informed and rooted in depth Dharma. So how best can we, in our very small little, I wouldn't even call us an organization, but an emergent non-profit, Dharma non-profit, and other Dharma organizations, centers, leadership, and ones that you're involved in. How best can SMS and Dharma organizations and leadership offer support and guidance in this challenging time? So, Yong, do you have any, really love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you, Thanissara. Yeah, not much more to add. I think this is just so much gratitude to have this opportunity to hear from both the sense of what's arising in terms of collective needs, but also drawing upon the collective wisdom of this group, and just having this space, recognizing that it really matters, and to explore these ways forward, seeding some ideas perhaps around what we would like to see, or what we would want, or needs, or visions in terms of what our Dharma institutions, our leaders, our spiritual communities, what roles they could play, how they might support us in navigating and meeting the urgency of this crisis. And even to ask, for some folks, I know this comes up too. Is there even a role? Do we want Dharma community organizations to be involved in this kind of work? For some, it may not be, but just to explore this question. What sort of conversations are needed? What spaces or models, or as Thanissara was saying, what offerings? So as we feel into the personal of kind of what we shared throughout our time together so far, what we're with, what we're feeling called to do, and as we start to move into and touch into as well this collective, what is it that we would wish to see from these organizations and people with perhaps a little more opportunity in terms of platform to support what it is that we want. And just to say, I think it's okay if some ideas are coming forth that aren't so fully formed, but that's even just expressing some wishes that are coming up through the heart, that are arising from our connection today, from what's been sharing, what's the energy in our groups, just to name some of what you can begin to imagine. So even to be just to be invited to be creative or even radical in terms of what we might like to see, so that we can share with each other and draw upon what's emerging today. So yeah, I don't know, Gina, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's great. Thank you, Yang.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Good. Thanks so much, Yong. Okay, so again, you'll be in a different combination of people you'll be meeting and sharing with. Again, so we're listening, sharing from what feels authentic for us to the extent that feels viable for us to share. How best can SMS and Dharma organizations and leadership offer support and guidance in this challenging time? Okay. So I'd like to just really open the space to share anything live to remind. Okay. So, Carolyn, greetings. Don't forget to unmute.
Greetings.
Good. Thanks. Yeah. Hi.
Very briefly, I don't
Yeah.
know how it would look, but groups for children, groups to inform, educate with love.
That's it. That's it. Yes. Yes. It's so vital. I've been pondering that. I'm going to my nephew's wedding and two beautiful young children that he and his partner have, and it's like they're completely oblivious. So when is that going to break and how? Jane, welcome.
Thank you so much. I think it's really, I'm pretty excited to share something that came up in my small group. I think the woman's name was Kate, reminding us about all the progress that's been made over the last few decades with the queer community, and especially thinking about that slogan from the struggle around getting treatment for folks with AIDS. It was silence equals death, and how important it is for us to find ways to just lift this up and bring the climate crisis into conversations, to help people not be in denial, and that even that sort of quote unquote small act of just lifting it up and being willing to speak about it can bring about change, or is really necessary. And conversations like this, to be with other people who are not in denial about the crisis, helps me in that regard, to not feel that I'm bringing something into conversations that people just don't want to hear, but to find ways with humility and courage to bring that in when I can.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, and to make it personal, like, one of the things for the LGBTQ plus communities was, that in every family there's a member of the to make it like, this is our family we're talking about. And we're talking about it's not just out there and them, or the global south. This is we're talking about our children, our grandchildren, our beloved, our pets, those, so to make it very personal, so you can't distance it, so Domyo, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I one of the reasons that I attended today was because of the messaging in the description of this event, in which you mentioned that eco-dharma is all great, but as long as we're siloing it as a special interest, instead of seeing it as absolutely core and essential to our practice. So I think, what SMS can keep doing, what you can keep doing, Thanissara, what I aspire to do as a Zen teacher and leader of a community, it's very it can be very tricky. But to somehow just to be bringing this issue into the core of our Dharma discussions and circles and practices, that this is not a sideline issue. This is not a hobby or a special interest. This is absolutely integral. So if you can keep amplifying that and repeating that and supporting us as we do so, that'd be great.
Thank you for that. Well said. Well said. Exactly. It needs to come off the margins by a few teachers out there trying to wing it like me and sort of navigating this sense of, oh, is this political, when it's actually our very life force we're talking about, our very ability to be, Thank you for that, Ramya. Carol.
It occurred to me during our talk that whatever Dharma groups we may be associated with, instead of saying, would you please do it, offer to teach it yourself. Just step forward and say, I would like to do a weekly group to do what we're doing here. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how to center our practice around this. Or whatever a group is appropriate for your group, step up. You don't have to hang back and say, I'm not a leader. Maybe you could be a leader if you stepped up and said, this is something I really need and I think other people would enjoy, and put yourself out there. I think
beautiful, Carol. And thank you. Like Carol was in our Mindfulness for the Apocalypse course and stepped up yourself to initiate the Santa Rosa Street Dharma, Sitting for Survival, that I went to a few of, and hope to return will return when I get through a whole bunch of things, including, and also Sister Santa Gita is doing, is to actually sit on the streets and have messaging that, the messaging and the posters. And thank you for stepping up and exempling that, what you were talking about, Carol. It was very, very powerful. Karen, hi, greetings.
Greetings. So something that was mentioned in our group was like some way of just like some kind of connection of Dharma groups all over the country, that where we could feel more a part of something really big. And I don't know how that would take shape, but I liked that. And I personally feel that, the election next year, like it's something that, Dharma groups all over the country could come together on and facilitate. And I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with our current leadership, with Biden. They don't think he's, the right person, but as far as I'm concerned, he's who we've got. And God forbid, if it looks like Donald Trump will be the nominee for the Republicans, and he's already said the first thing that he'll do is start rolling back every climate initiative that, Biden has done some good things, which I think, we need to acknowledge and appreciate. I mean, there is a lot of, support for green energy. So it's something. So I think, organizing around the election on the outer level, that feels really important to me. And on the inner level, I would love to request another go around of the Great Compassion teachings that Thanissara did a year ago in the spring. It's been so transformative for me, so important. And I just feel like it's something that can really support people, in that inner way that, we need to resource ourselves. And it's just such a beautiful teaching. So I hope you guys bring it forth again.
Thank you, Karen. We did initiate we did launch under SMS umbrella with Tara Brach and Conda Mason, getting up to the midterms last year, called Mind Our Democracy. I don't know if you know about that, whether you were aware of it. But it was really, I mean, obviously it's a non-profit, you can't be partisan, you can't actually, but there is a line that you can walk actually in the Dharma community, which is encouraging people to vote. And then the pictures, we had high profile yoga, wellness, people would have like thousands and thousands of followers that are influencers in those realms. We had invited them all to give a pitch for voting, and obviously the way that they were bringing their pitch is obviously what we're talking about, just as you said. And we hosted a number of events, and we've still got that on the back burner to reinvigorate for going up to this. This is actually a game changer. You're right, it's not a normal election. The media are running it as a normal election. The politics is such that if we lose this election, it will be such a disaster on so many levels. We just cannot. This is a major battle on all levels, and so much is implicated, so much to lose. So yeah, we need to show up, and we need to dissolve this divide. At the heart of the Dharma, the Buddha was quite political. He was trained in politics, and he engaged to bring everyone in, but he did take stands, very clear stands. And it's time to take a stand in terms of we are going to run in the early part of next year. I'm sorry that there's a lot of organizational shifts happening at SMS, which have meant that we've had to go put things on the back burner for now while we sort out our organizational structures, because we literally can't go forward until that's done. And Michael Crass, who's come in as executive director, is really getting in the weeds to get us up to speed. But that's scheduled for early next year. We'll be rerunning Thanissara's beautiful 8-week Guanyin, like introduction and deepening into the Guanyin Dharmas. I've invited Venerable Heng Ying. I hope still on board. Sorry, I haven't been in touch. I've been completely submerged, but I would love you to. Dharma Master Heng Yin has been 30 more years as a bhikshuni in the city of 10,000 Buddhas, where the transmission actually originated for us, and perhaps a few other long-term practitioners of this Dharma door. So yeah, we're going to rerun it and other things. So in the new year, we'll be ready our structure's already up to speed enough to be able to go forward and bring the dharmas that we need, as you say, to nourish this change of consciousness. Alana, lovely to see you.
Just so happy to be here and just feeling like the nourishing nectar of all of this conversation and connection. So just really appreciating this. And just really briefly, the theme of resourcing came up a lot in our small groups, and just really feeling into that as something that can be so critical that SMS and greater Dharma communities can offer. And that resourcing can look many different ways, as the Buddha adapted his teachings to different people at different stages of their practice, really seeing this theme of resourcing as being different for people, active skill building for some, and more like emotional processing and support and deepening language and community for others. Not that they're different, they completely overlap with one another. But there can be very discrete areas that SMS really focuses on in terms of like how they're meeting different people at different stages in their journey. This really like brings to mind for me a concept from like the organizing communities of, sort of the ladder of engagement, right? And like how do people like move along that ladder of deepening their engagement and increasing their capacity. And I just really feel like community building, resourcing, and like bringing in wisdom from other groups that have been doing this that can help really provide that practical tools and skill set that people need to start organizing both together in community and self-organizing in discrete communities, because this is a very distributed community that SMS has been building. So just like how to just continue to nourish and foster that ripple effect and that energy and momentum that's being fostered here. So I'll just pause there, but thank you so much for everything that's been offered to this shared field today.
Thank you, Lana. You're so spot on. It's so spot on. Thank you for that. Yeah. Linda, lovely to see you. Love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this day. Been looking forward to it. I would love to see the mindfulness in the apocalypse taught again. That was so profound. I'm loving the hospicing modernity book and the exercises. Those are amazing tools. In my group, I brought up geographical groups. I'm in Virginia, close to DC, and I would be happy to set up a group for people on the East Coast. I don't know how many there are, but just to get together and have a Sangha and come together with ideas and then come together as a whole. This Sangha, I take refuge in this Sangha so much. I feel so isolated. And so to be here is, it deepens my practice. It allows me to continue. I love holding space. I'm not physically able to go sit someplace, but I can hold space at home and sit while others are out on the street. It would be nice to know when everyone is doing that. I know I do it on Fridays, but there may be others who are able to do that and just send that energy out as a collective and share resources. Maybe there are others who would like to contact the Senate and with me and get groups to do that and get feedback and then come back to SMS and report. That's just some thoughts that I had.
No, you're absolutely right, Melinda. And that's the core vision of PEON, People's Alliance for Earth Action Now, when we co-originated that under SMS nearly 2 years ago, was small groups, local, connecting nationally, internationally. That is the way to go. We have to find groups. We have to find collective ways of holding this and deepening into and then collaborating. And definitely will be proactively emerging that.
I'm happy to volunteer. I'm happy to step up and volunteer.
Well, that's the spirit. Thank you. And thank you. So I know how much, an enormous amount that you already do. And thank you so much. And to all of you. And before we finish, I want to invite Linda. Linda's been a long ally of our work and of PEON, an activist, yoga teacher, practitioner. Linda, I wonder if you would talk about your initiative, because it's been so successful getting behind Amazon Watch for Indigenous-led action in the Amazon through gathering funds from people holding classes. So, because we want to really also heighten that and get that out much, much more, because it's got so much potential.
Thank you so much, Thanissara, and thank you everyone for sharing today. It's inspiring, isn't it, to come together in this way? I feel energized after these few hours together. And yes, I am deep into modifying the website in this moment for Yoga for Climate Action, and hoping to really encourage opportunities for teachers, whether they be meditation in teachers or Tai Chi or yoga teachers, or to branch out into what does yoga really mean? Yoga, yoking the mind and the body, and how can we come together to practice in a way that actually benefits our Mother Earth, by donating proceeds instead of the teacher taking those proceeds to, giving those proceeds to organizations that are really the movers and the chain, the shakers. And Amazon Watch has been so wonderful to work with. I'm changing the website to offer other organizations. I'm really supportive of 350.org, and I've heard a lot of fellow teachers who have offered programming through Yoga for Climate Action interested in being able to donate some proceeds of their classes. So I'm going to leave it there because I'm really aware of our time. But thank you so much for the opportunity to speak about this initiative, and would love to work with any and all of you to create programming. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you. When we capture all these like what you're doing and other proactive things, we can share so people can link with you directly, and you can collaborate. And just to also mention, Linda, you mentioned mindfulness in the apocalypse. I'm working on approaching a number of centers, not just in the US, but that I have personal, worked at in our pathway, Thanissara Mai's journey of Dharma teaching in many different countries, to see if they would if we could do it collaboratively with their community and like scale it up, so I'm excited to. I agree. I think that was a very transformational process for me, where I understood it's not about just like as a leader going, this is what we're going to do. It's about like, let's have a conversation. We're going to seed the conversation. You're going to talk, and then we're going to look at what comes out of that. And then it's sort of like comes from the collective. And then let that lead. And I remember listening to Mr. Mandela. We were so fortunate at the time that we arrived for our work in South Africa, 1994, just when he was elected. And it was a very pivotal moment, obviously, for the world, and particularly the consciousness he brought. And I remember being at an inaugurational emergence of the Rhodes Mandela Foundation, where they were merging Rhodes Trust with the Mandela Foundation to pay back the reparations from all the money stolen from Rhodes by Rhodes and Co. in the colonial project. Anyway, that's another story, but related to what we're doing. But so there's this in Westminster Palace in London, where they sort of ordain kings and queens and all the rest of it. They had this big meeting with all of the. I'm going over time, but I'd like to just tell you this few minutes. And this big meeting with all of the world leaders on the stage, about 7 of them. It was the era of Bill Clinton, so he was there, and Tony Blair and all the rest of them. And they're all giving these, and Mr. Mandela was there because it was a Mandela Foundation that was being inaugurated and launched. And so there were these, there was a big thing in Cape Town, there was a big thing in London. So they're all giving these high flying speeches, ideals, like we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And all very inspiring and sort of like candy floss, really. So I don't know what you call that in America, that candy floss thing you have at the fun fair, pink thing that they whip up. Anyway, it was a bit like that. And so Mr. Mandela, he's just a Dharma transmission without saying anything. He's just so regal. I mean, he is from a regal line anyway in the Xhosa lineage, but he's just had this regality, this sort of kingly type presence without. And he just stood up, and he was quite elderly at the time. So he stood up, and then he just gave this Dharma talk about what leadership really is. And then one of the things he said, if you're a real leader, what you actually do is get behind others to help them become leaders. And you lift them up. So it was so contrary to that, I'm going to do this and we're going to do and then when he got to walk, he kind of got off the stage, and as an elder, they let him go first, thank God. But there was almost a battle between these Bill Clinton and all the rest of them to kind of grab his arm. They were like, almost like, we're going to grab. There was such a magnetism. And then he kind of just walks like this kingly elephant through the crowd of Rhodes scholars as everyone's coming up to try and, it was really spiritual. It was like a darshan. It was a darshan. And one of the things Mr. Mandela would always say, and he was someone, if someone should know about this, it would be him, having spent 27 years imprisoned, losing his family, losing so many comrades in the struggle years and all the rest of it. Very bitter, and yet coming out with this consciousness that just elevated. He would say, it seems impossible until it's done. And I think, it's not to have false hope, but it's not over yet. It's not over yet by any means. And we were talking in the break about how there's a moment, there's like a tipping point that we're moving towards, where people are going to wake up more and more, and then something's going to start shifting in the collective. And that's going to be a very powerful moment. We don't know what way that will go. As is said, when a civilizational myth it breaks, it's a dangerous moment, and it's breaking the myths that we've been living under. And it can devolve into, we can see that path: fascism, violence, oppression, genocide. We've been down that path. Or we can heighten the frequency. It's that kind of moment we're in. So everything we're doing and do from now is to heighten that frequency, to hold whatever's coming, to be able to hold and stay there and help it shift in the way it needs to shift. And then that piece of the shift is unpredictable. And we were saying in the breakout room, like, for me growing up under the shadow of the Second World War and the Iron Curtain and all the rest of it, and the huge divide, that there was one day waking up in 1991 and seeing that wall, which seemed impenetrable, the Berlin Wall, being literally smashed to pieces by an overwhelm of people. And it felt like it was spontaneous. This moment arrived and how quickly these walls that seem impenetrable, apartheid, Berlin Wall, will always be there. And then suddenly, when they're gone, they're gone. And so we're adding to that pressure, our consciousness, every action we do, and we can heighten it and increase it as we come together with this power of the Dharma. There's nothing like the power of sacred, spiritually informed engagement and activism. We've seen that through the likes of Gandhi. We've seen it through the likes of Mr. Mandela. We've seen that through the Solidarity movement in Poland. We've seen it exemplified in so many ways. So the model is there, the ancestors are there, so we can keep tapping into them and following their path at this mapless moment, not completely unmapped. So leave a few words of encouragement for us to keep going and to take the example of those that have gone before, of breaking the spell in any ways we can, to increase our sharing of truth, to feel the guidance of the spirit of the deep Gaian cosmology that we're completely linked into, that's speaking to us, the living Dharma, as Ajahn Chah would call it, the living spirit of Dharma, and to take faith and support in us together. So I'd like to invite Yong to finish our session with the sharing of blessings. And thank you so much, everyone. Love you and look forward to us meeting again soon.
Thank you, Thanissara. So just a few moments here to close our time together. Just a brief pause to recognize, to acknowledge how we're feeling now, having spent this time together in community, in conversation, and that any amount of hope or strength or uplift or possibility of connection, may that be shared. May those also too ripple out into the field so that others can feel some of this sense of what's possible in the world. So may all we do to show up and continue to show up and contribute be for the benefit of all beings, and may we all be free from suffering. Thank you.
Many Padme Hum to that. Thank you so much, Yong. Thank you, everyone, dear Sangha members, dear community, dear friends, dear fellow voyagers through the shadows, guided by the light in our hearts and the light in each other's hearts and the light of the Dhamma. May you fare well, may you stay well, and whatever situation arises, we'll hold faith to this spirit of awakening. It's so magical, it's so beautiful, it's so blissful, really, in the midst of it all, even. And enjoy and appreciate the beauty of nature, give thanks, touch the earth with love, and on we go. Take care, everyone, and see you shortly down the road.